Lucky last, talk for today is from Nicholas. Nicholas comes from QUT, downriver, where the first Delta was hosted 28 years ago. And today Nicholas is going to talk about Gradescope, which many of us use now for marking. So over to you, Nicholas. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to say thanks to everyone. This is my first time being at the Delta conference, and I just want to say how really welcoming it's been, and it's been really lovely. And having never heard of this conference before, because I've only been in this teaching position for 2 years, it feels like a really lovely community, and I feel completely welcomed. And it's really it's a little bit surprising actually to come to a conference and just have everyone kind of just be in one big group and be really welcoming to everyone. So it's really nice and very surprising as a thing to come to. So I'm going to be talking about Gradescope. This comes from my position. I'm in a full-time position as a teaching intensive academic. So that looks like a split of 90% teaching and 10% service, which means every semester I teach about 4 units. So I teach as many units and coordinate as many units as the students are taking in a full-time load, which many of the students then get very surprised at. And every time I talk to any of the other academics in the school, they go, hang on, you're doing 4 units? Like, how do you have time to do anything? And the answer is you don't. So you come up with things like this, like trying to increase efficiencies and being the teaching focused staff member. These are the jobs that get put on you. They go, we've got this new technology, can you figure it all out and tell everyone else how it goes? So that's been my job. And this is kind of going to be talking about like our preliminary test of trying to use it for as much as we can. I wasn't sure how well spread out it was, so I want to quickly check how many people use Gradescope. So a few. Anyone never heard of Gradescope before? A few, okay. So for those that don't know, Gradescope is kind of like new Turnitin. I don't think they made it, but I'm pretty sure they acquired it. So whenever you go onto it, it says Gradescope by Turnitin. It looks a lot like Turnitin and it feels a bit like it, except that it's really nice to use. So we use Canvas as our learning management software because it's free and open source, so universities love saving money. So I feel like a lot of people have switched over to Canvas because you can also self-host it. So it means that they don't have to pay anyone else for anything. Gradescope integrates really well with Canvas. Canvas has its own marking thing. Every time someone says, why would I use Gradescope over SpeedGrader on Canvas? Well, it's basically everything that SpeedGrader does, but a little bit nicer with a few kind of creature comforts. It works really well on handwritten assignments, which is great for the math school because a lot of our assignments we get our students to do are handwritten. They have to scan them in and then upload them. But it also works with typeset assignments, so you can still use it for everything. So the general benefits are things like making it easier for students to submit. One of the really nice things is there's a phone app for Gradescope that they can sign in with their university account. And instead of getting them to handwrite all their assignment and then take their photos or scan their work or anything, the app does that all inside, so they don't have to try and scan it, then find it, and then upload it and hope it all works. They can just use the one app to scan it all in and submit it all at once, which means they actually remember to press the submit button at the end and they haven't made a draft and then they missed the deadline and then you can't even see their assignment or anything. It also, when they upload it, they can also designate which parts of their assignment are which question. So that makes it easier for grading later, which I'll talk about. But it does all of that in the app, making it easy for the students. They can also do it through a web browser, but it's all kind of self-contained. You can embed it on Canvas as well, and I'm sure on other learning management softwares as well. So it's kind of similar across everything. Another nice thing is that instead of having lots of students emailing you after the grades have come out saying, can you please regrade my assignment? Or you get the same AI email of, dear professor, I would strongly like to ask for a regrade, and it's this lovely assertive email until you get 3 more of them that have the same assertions, then you feel like, okay, they've all used the same thing to write this. Instead, there's a regrade request feature where they actually have to go onto their submission, pick the part that they want regraded, and they can say this part. And then they can give a description of why they think they should have got the marks. You can go straight to that part of the assignment, remark it if you want to, and then it's done. And if they want to have multiple parts, they can select the multiple parts, which means you don't have to go to their assignment, read the entire thing, and then decide what to do. So you can just go straight to it. They also have to be more intentioned on what they're asking, which means it's benefiting them as well. They actually have to think about this, and it makes it a bit easier for you. Marking rubrics, something annoying about SpeedGrader on Canvas is that if you make a marking rubric for your assignment, you have to do it before you start marking any of them. As soon as you mark the first assignment, the rubric's locked. You can't change any of it, you can't change descriptions, you can't change grades on it or anything, it's just completely locked and you're stuck. On Gradescope, you can make it whenever you want. You can add items, delete items, change the weights of them, change the descriptions, all as you go, which makes it really good for doing things like some of the problems that people have addressed with trying to find out how students are making mistakes and having to go through assignments or exams and kind of trying to categorize all of those mistakes. You can do that on the fly while marking, and then you could redo it again if you need to, but you can also get most of that job done to kind of find all of the similar responses. A really nice thing is that you can do all of your marking with two hands on the keyboard. So everything is keyboard shortcuts, which means you can have your left hand on one side that you can just apply rubric items, and your right hand is navigating pages and selecting the next one, which doesn't feel like it would be that good, but reports from students have been, I don't feel depressed after marking anymore. I describe it as I am less sad. I'm not necessarily happy after marking, but I'm a lot less sad than I was. It also makes it much faster. I have one graph that shows a speed comparison between marking like this, so it is faster. One of their big selling points, and I sound like I'm shilling for Gradescope, but they're not paying me. I wish they would because I tell everyone about it. A nice thing for moderating assignments and exams is if you've got one person marking an entire question, it means you don't get some students getting the nice marker and some students getting the nasty one. Instead, you just put the nasty marker on one whole question, everyone gets that nasty marker, and they also get the nice marker on the other question, so it comes out in the wash, but they all get the same one. This makes it really easy to separate that marking per question, that you can just, when they submit and they tell you which parts are which question, when the markers come to market, it only gives them that question and it really easily splits it up. They don't have to, if you're the fourth question, you don't have to navigate past the first three, it just gets you straight to that fourth one. And it also integrates well with your learning management system. So once your marks are in, you press a button to post it back to Canvas and it sits there and loads for a while, but it pushes all the results back and you're done. So you don't have to try and take them off and upload them again or anything. Some negatives is that it is another service. It will cost you money. If budgets are tight, your university will probably say, no, we're not buying any more software anymore. Also, you get some people, I've talked to some other academics that say, I've just learned SpeedGrader, why do I need to now learn Gradescope? So there's that kind of hurdle of having to learn a new software. Some students don't make use of the fact that you can split the assignment, so they upload it and then just press skip. And then when you go to grade it, it says the student hasn't assigned any pages, which means you then have to go slower for that student, but mostly that's overcome by the ones that do. Some students like to use OneNote, and there's like 4 different versions of OneNote depending on what device you're using. And one of them, when you export as a PDF, instead of splitting it into pages, it just makes one big long mega page. And so then the student just submits that and they say, all the questions are on this page, except they're this big. And then you have to get the mouse because you actually have to move around the page to try and find them. So that then breaks your flow. You can use it to mark paper-based exams. In fact, I brought one. I forgot to bring my prop up. So we'll get one of them. Here's one of our paper-based exams. Nice, lovely booklet. You can mark these through it as well, which I've heard some other people are doing. It does work better in the end. There's a bit of an upfront cost of turning it into a digital thing, and someone has to do that. Being the preliminary study, that was my job this semester, but it looks like it should be a job that we can get like sessional staff members to do, or the tutors, or however your university talks about them, that it's a bit of a laborious job, but it's not too difficult. And you can get it in. It does require you to actually watch what you're doing. So for example, this exam has 4 booklets. Each booklet is 2 A3 sheets folded into a booklet. So there's 8 pages that they need to be scanned double-sided. which means you're sitting there and it scans through, and every now and then 2 pages go through as one. And I don't know what your scanners are like, but ours at the end, it says there has been 16 pages scanned, and you get 2 seconds to see it, and then it disappears. And if you're looking away for any reason and it says 12 pages, you don't know. And so you continue on with the rest of your 200 scripts, you go to upload them, and one of them hasn't got enough pages. And so you have to go back and do it. So it's a job that you do have to actually look at, but is a fairly simple job. Okay, so all of that to then go, why are we really pushing for this, and why am I spending so much of my time having to do this? Firstly, because I'm teaching focused, so I don't have any other research things to do, so this is one of my jobs. But also, our marking budgets are getting more restrictive. The school's always looking to put less and less of our money towards the sessional staff members or the tutors to do exam marking. So more of that's being put onto the unit coordinators, and the numbers are just getting reduced. So our number of minutes per student for marking exams gets reduced, so we need to try and make those number of minutes used go down. Also, students would love more feedback on their assessments. This is something I heard someone talking about 2 days ago, that maths is one of the least performing, actually it was this morning, I think you were saying that feedback on maths assignments is really low across everywhere, because it's really hard. When you're going and marking the assignments, leaving extra feedback takes time, because you have to write it in or type in extra things per assignment. And when you've got larger classes, like I'm teaching the small semester of the 2 large units I was doing, and they're 220 students each. First semester, there are 1,000 students. So leaving feedback on every single student's assignment takes a long time. So we've found a way that we can try and do that while grading that makes it a bit better. So that's one way that we're using Gradescope. Moderating assignments takes a long time. Like if you've got one marker that just was a bit mean and didn't give as many marks as you want, or was giving too many, going and changing all of that on everyone's assignment is a bit hard. You could just go and deduct 2 from everyone or add 1 to everyone, but then you don't know if they've actually done that to the right students. Because you can make rubric items on the fly, you can, I tell my tutors all the time, make extra items if you're not sure, because then we can just go back later and we can adjust the marks for that rubric item, and it pushes it across all of the students. So that way, if they aren't sure if these 2 methods are equivalent, they can tag the students with those 2 methods, and then at the end, they can come to me and say, are both these worth the marks? I can say, yes, we adjust the marks for both, and it's all done. We don't have to go and actually find any of those students. Also, something else that people have been saying is that when you're trying to find out this process information about how students are doing questions, you have to go through and actually look at all of their responses to do that. Because you can make these rubric items as you go, you're able to do that while you're marking. And so you're assigning grades to the students and categorizing their mistakes at the same time, which means afterwards you've got all those data, you've got it tagged with the student on their submission, and you've given them the grades. You don't have to double handle everything. Okay. It does require a little bit of a change to how we think about marking. So I know in all my experience of teaching maths for the last 10 or so years as a tutor and now a lecturer, traditionally when we marked our assignments, we were given these kind of checkpoints for where the students got up to. So you give them a question, here's a question on finding the divergence of a vector field, and you go, if they manage to remember what on earth the divergence is, give them a mark. If they manage to actually apply the derivatives correctly, they get another mark. So they kind of have to reach these checkpoints in order to get the marks. This is fairly efficient when you're going through 200 exams. You open up the paper, you look, you just kind of skip over everything and find those checkpoints and put down the marks, and it's nice and good. On an assignment, when the student wants feedback, if they haven't reached that checkpoint, you then have to stop, write down what they've done wrong so they actually get that feedback. So kind of taking that into view, we also have this kind of pressure to give students rubrics, which I'm sure works really well in other fields, but I've really struggled in maths to go, how do I make a rubric for an assignment on doing multiple integrals? I can't really say our high distinction standard is really good at doing triple integrals, and a distinction standard is not quite as good, but still very good at doing triple integrals, and a pass mark is can do the first step or so. So instead, I kind of have these vibey rubrics, and I haven't got in trouble for it yet. But I kind of go, here's the question on, what was this one? This was another vector calculus one, but it was like, given the problem, this problem's worth 1 mark. At the end of the assignment, I give them this breakdown and say, if you can correctly set up the problem, that's worth half those marks. And then actually executing that gets you the other half. So they know how much they're going to get for being able to do the different parts, which also tells the students if they can't actually do the integral, but they can at least remember how to form the integral and get the concept, they will attract 2 of the marks. So like for question 3, 2/3 of the mark are just conceptual, and only 1 of the mark is actually the mechanical getting out the integral. This then goes really well with trying to set up this feedback and grading at the same time, is that you usually give feedback for students that didn't get the thing right. It's not the students that are getting it correct that need the feedback because they get the marks back and they see, yes, I got it right. It's when they're not able to do it. So instead of giving them marks for getting the right answer, if we kind of flip it and take on this negative grading scheme where they start with all the marks, and then when they've made the mistakes, we deduct the marks for that mistake, but the description in that rubric item tells them what they've done wrong. So it took a bit to get my head around this feeling because I feel like everyone getting full marks and then taking away marks feels a bit nasty rather than awarding them marks for doing the right thing. But as mathematicians, we can feel like starting up and taking down or going down and adding up, you end up at the same place. You just have to kind of switch perspective. So this makes us have these kind of rubrics with lots of red on them, but it's okay because there's also lots of words. So now instead of having that question of going correct setup gets you half a mark and then correct execution gets you the other half, we now have a rubric that goes correct is 0 because you haven't lost anything, and that's the green one. So you know that if you get that correct, you manage to correct setup and correct execution. If you weren't able to get that, you'll have a number that's not the full marks, and you'll get something like, this is for that last one. So I had a question on a vector calculus thing. I gave them a conservative field, except it wasn't conservative at the origin. Didn't tell them. They had to do a closed contour. Didn't come back as 0. So the last question was just speculate on why. And as you can see from the rubric, the standard was valid speculation or any reasonable attempt at valid speculation. So I used that in the rubric to say, you need to speculate, and if you don't, I'll put the rubric item of you didn't have the expected results, so that loses you the mark, but you get the feedback then on your assignment saying, this is what you didn't do. So this is where you can ask your tutor for exactly what that means if you're not able to figure it out. And then there's the ones about the speculation. So if you didn't speculate, you've got a thing saying did not speculate because that was explicitly asked in the question, or your speculation was even more shallow than what I had told you you could do. But this then lets our students get feedback and grades at the same time. We don't have to stop the marking to write out feedback. You can just press a button and do it. All of the numbers that are next to there are the keyboard shortcuts. So when the picture and their assignment is in front of you, you press the number and it just applies that item. You can press multiple ones. You've got 4 fingers that'll sit nicely on the keyboard. A lot of the time you can kind of put the common ones on there and you can just read through, quickly tap a couple of keys, press next. So it gets it nice and fast, and the students are getting feedback. So from the few students that I've talked to in the workshops, I say few because there are only a few students in our workshops, they have appreciated actually getting the feedback rather than just getting a mark and then having to go and talk to someone about it and then going, oh, the tutor at my workshop isn't the one that marked it, so they can't tell me anyway. They're able to figure out most of it from the comments left on the rubric. So then the question is, taking that from assignments, can we use this for exams? So I'm not going to propose using a negative marking scheme for exams because often the students don't get to see the scripts unless they ask to come and see them afterwards because they think they could get a couple extra marks. So we don't need to leave that feedback as much on the exams, but can we use the other benefits like the faster grading and splitting them up by question a bit easier? Can we use that on these paper-based exams? Because one of the really slow points is that when you've got 200 scripts to pass around and 4 questions, it means you have 4 markers. All of those 4 markers need to touch all of those 200 scripts, which either means you have to lock them in a room and they just get to have just the papers in that room, or they're handing around big boxes of scripts to each other and hoping that they can meet at the right time. Or you get people moving them around campus or not campus, doing the marking whenever they can. So that's a big slowdown in actually getting these results back. It can then take over a week to get it all done because people have to fit it in. Also, once they've done the marking, they have to count the marks. So if they write on the scripts, they have to count them. You hope they haven't made a mistake. They then have to transfer that into some sort of record and then put that onto your management system. So making sure they've actually kept the record, they've counted correctly, you get those numbers back, and then you're able to do all of that. Also takes time. It would also be really great to be able to get more than a vibe about what the students have done. So I've mentioned it as a comment on someone else's talk, but in the second year Maths for Engineering course that I teach, the vector calculus question has a history of just no response. It's the question that all the students skip over. And for the last 3 years, we've gone, most students skip this question, but we don't know how many. It's just that most of them you get back from the marker. We could look at the number of zeros, but that's also students that have done it wrong, and also students that got 1 mark basically skipped the question. So I wanted to be able to see if I could actually get some numbers to back up my view of the students aren't doing this question. We need to do something about it. So that would also be good to get as actually like a breakdown of marks for your exam, which is really hard to ask of your tutors if they're sitting and marking 200 scripts, like they're doing it into the wee hours of the morning. It's taking them multiple days to get through. And if they have to mark it and also keep some sort of like statistics about it or extra metadata, it's a lot to try and ask for them. So in order to do this, there is the first step of scanning in all of the exams. It would be great if someone else could do this, but for right now, it needs to be me or us. This is actually something I kind of would encourage you to do, which is a bit odd to say, do a bit more work on top of all the work you're doing. But that's because in the end, you actually end up with a little bit less work and way more data. So it's really useful in the end. Small exams aren't too bad. I taught 2 engineering maths units this semester, a first year and a second year one. The first year one, they do multiple choice and then short response. Their short response book looks like this. So they're nice and easy. You put it into the scanner, it scans through, super great. I was done in an hour and a half to scan 200 exams in. The second year one, they don't have any multiple choice. It's just 4 long response questions. So they have 4 booklets with 8 pages. That took me 10 hours to scan. Because they're also stapled together. So you have to unstaple the 4 booklets, lay them all out, move them around a bit so they're not stuck together, and then feed them through the scanner. Thankfully, my lovely wife helped me out with this. So we were kind of tag teaming this, that she would unstaple and then feed them over. So we got it done in about 5 hours each, which means it was about 10 hours all up. And then processing them after wasn't too hard. I wrote a short Python script to cut them all in half digitally and then reorder them in the right thing. And then we could upload them. So I've got that on there. It only took about an hour and a half for the short one. It does balloon up if you've got staples or if you've got large things. So some of our units, our smaller units, have tried rewriting the exam to be in a more friendly format. So rather than being in a booklet, just being on the actual test paper, having space to write it. Vector calculus questions don't really lend themselves to that because some students manage to do it in 3 lines because they write really small, and some students manage to get 0 marks while filling 3 pages with scribbles. Or they write really large because some people just need to write really large, and we don't want to disadvantage those students by only giving them a box this big and saying, you should be able to do your triple integral in this much space, and they're going to take half of that with just writing out an integral sign. So that's something that I'm trying to weigh up to figure out how we can balance that. But for the moment, I'm just working around it. The second step is uploading. Like I said, I split these using a script, so that wasn't too bad. So yeah, the single booklet, super easy, 4 booklets. was a little less easy. You have to actually make sure that everything goes in the correct order and that it all uploads correctly. The nice thing about Gradescope is if you tell them where the student's name is, so there's a name up the top, it can recognize most of them, and it does a pretty good job of just saying that's that student's submission, automatically links it up. Any ones that don't, you can just type in really quickly who it is. Then we've got the marking. So this was the best part. So across these two units, I had the first year unit where there were 2 short questions. So I had 2 markers doing those. And then the longer one, I had 3 other markers and me to mark the other questions. So usually marking one of those longer ones, you get about 20 hours to mark the 200 scripts to mark one question. So it's about 80 hours of exam marking split across 4 people. It took me about a minute per script marking these digitally. So I used to not have to scan them in for 10 hours, but it also used to take me 20 hours of getting through these exams. So you'd block out 3 days of work and kind of just sit there, taking a page out, marking it, putting it back, and that was your life for 3 days. Now I was able to do it in an afternoon, which was much, much nicer. And yeah, it was ridiculously nice. You're also not handling papers. So you're not having to fiddle around with them, worry about them getting damaged. They can remain safely somewhere that they're not going to get damaged. Also, your fingers don't get dry. I always forget how dry your fingers get when you're handling paper for 8 hours a day. And then they just get cut on everything. So that was really nice, not having to do that. You can also mark anywhere. So I take a lot of public transport because I live about an hour away. So you can't mark a paper exam on the train safely when you've got 4 booklets. But when it's digital, you can. So I could work from home for my 40-minute commute and mark some exams. And that was really great. It also means that tutors don't need to be on campus to mark. They can safely mark from home because they don't actually need to keep those papers with them. Also, they don't have to count the marks. It's automatically counted as they fill out the rubric, so you don't have to worry about anyone miscounting marks. I've had that happen before, that a student came back and they were missing a few marks to pass the unit. Turns out it was just tallied wrong. So they travelled all the way in and just found out, oh, it's already done. So it avoids all of those things. It also lets you get nice statistics and stuff because it's all automatically counted. Feedback from our tutors is overwhelmingly positive. There's a little bit of negative, but most of it is positive. This is from one of the tutors. So for the shorter exam that was getting marked, I got it all scanned, gave it to the tutors. They said, oh, I should get onto this tomorrow, then I'll let you know how it goes. And I asked them to record how long it took to actually scan it, to mark it so we could get some data. Early the next day, I get an email that kind of felt a bit weird that said, oh, I've got some questions about the exam. Can we have a quick Zoom call now? And I get onto the Zoom call and the tutor goes, I think I've finished marking the exam, but I'm not sure. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, I only spent 2 hours marking this exam and I feel like it probably should have taken me longer. But we looked through and they'd finished marking it all because previously they'd taken 2.5 minutes to mark each of these questions. And in the end, it took them about 30 seconds to mark each of these. And they kind of got into this real big flow and then went, oh, it's all finished. I'd set out the rest of the day to do this. So that was really odd, but also really nice. And then they gave me this lovely feedback. They hadn't used Gradescope before, but they managed to learn it and figure out how to do it really fast in about 2 hours to mark these exams. So burden wasn't too hard. Very easy to navigate the booklet. So you get some students that are meant to answer the question at the start, but then for some reason they decide to flick over a few pages and then put a couple stray answers at the end of the booklet. When you're marking your paper exams, you have to make sure you flick over and search through all of the extra booklets because they'll probably put it in another booklet as well. On the computer, you mash the key a couple times and see there's no extra pen marks anywhere and it's done. So even that was nicer. No mental load of keeping track of the mark tally. So that stress of miscounting, completely gone. So it doesn't feel like much, but it ends up making a big difference. They didn't have to be on campus, so they could comfortably mark from home. They also didn't need to have 2 screens. So they didn't need to have the marking guide on one screen and then the copy of the exam on the other and then all of the things in front of them. They could just do it all on one screen because the rubric becomes the marking guide. So it all comfortably fit on one thing. They didn't have to come and pick up and drop off things with the lecturer, so we didn't have to coordinate schedules. And it didn't take them multiple sessions. They marked them all at once, which made them feel like it was a lot more consistent, that it wasn't like yesterday's batch got the hard end of the stick and today's batch get the lenient ones, or you get right to the end and you're just kind of trying to get to the end of the marking. They felt like they could be consistent across all of it because it was so much faster and easier. Here's the graph I promised. Paper-based exams took 150 seconds to mark each one. And the digital ones, there's a tiny little wee thing of about 30 seconds. So that makes a big difference when you're marking 200 exams. If you're marking 600 or 900, that would make an even bigger difference. But this was their one negative remark about Gradescope, was that the traditional approach now feels barbaric. So on that Zoom call that I had with them, they said, the problem with this is that I've now just had a box of other exams come in that I'd promised to mark, and I really wish I'd waited 2 hours and marked them first, because I feel really nice now and I'm not going to feel nice after I mark those. So their one problem is that they still had other units that weren't like this. So now they're trying to push everyone to do this as well because they've experienced the good life. I said earlier there were a couple other negative remarks. So one of the markers really struggled with the idea of having these big rubrics. So they ran out of keys on the keyboard for the shortcuts because it puts it all along the number rows. So if you've got more than 10 items in your rubric, so more than 10 common mistakes or anything, you run out of shortcut keys. There is a workaround. You can make groups. So then you can effectively have 100 rubric items because you've got each of your number keys as a group and then your letter keys as a hotkey, but they didn't know that at the time. So they had to use their mouse to click around and they didn't really enjoy it. It also took them a while to make the rubric because every time a student would make a new mistake, they'd have to make a new rubric item and they felt a bit slow. So we kind of probably need to train the tutors a bit. I kind of just put it onto them and just said, here's the marking scheme. I'll leave you to make the rubric how you want so that you can feel in charge of it and feel comfortable with it and put it however you want it there. But we probably need to be a bit more hands-on with that and make it for them a bit or work with them to make it, and that should get rid of that negative experience. The other thing is rubric item statistics. So because this is all digital, you get to be able to see all of the breakdown of the marks. So I've tried to make sure there's no identifying stuff in here, but this is stuff from last week. So like I said, preliminary study, I've just been able to have a look at this. Everyone's talks have been really distracting from me having a look at my grade statistics, so thanks for that. But we can see all of our rubric items, we can see a percentage of students that have done that. So if you've got one thing that you think is going to be really tricky, you can see exactly how many students there are. All of these blue links as well, if you click on them, it tells you every student that has made that mistake. You can quickly click on it and see how they've made it. So it brings up exactly where that has happened. So this also is great for moderation. So in case one of your tutors comes and says, oh, I applied this thing to lots of students, but I'm not sure if they actually all counted as that. I had that for one of my markers, came back and said I wasn't sure what you meant, but I thought I'd just finish marking them rather than emailing you at 11 o'clock. I waited till tomorrow to tell you. We just went through, clicked through a couple of them and then separated out the students that should have been awarded a different one. And it was much quicker than having to go through their list that they would have had to have kept. Automatically kept a list of all the students that they had to ask me about and made that a lot easier. It's also been great, like I said, that question that no one answers. I made a rubric item for no response. So it's a vector calculus question. They can get 1 mark for reading the resource sheet and remembering what a flux integral is. So if they could remember which of those integrals was the one that was the flux one, they could get a mark. And if they did nothing else, they only got that 1 mark. Some of them didn't even do that and got 0. So rather than having to try and guess from their final mark on that of the 0s and 1s, which ones were the no responses, I can now tell you 29% of those students did not try the flux integral question, which is what I thought, but now I know. I can also download these results, and I managed to do this morning, and you get a nice big CSV of the students and which rubric items were applied to their result. So I can then pull them out and go, all of the students that didn't try this question, what did their in-semester assignments that looked at the same kind of content look like? And then we can see if there's actually a split between students that maybe do better in the semester and don't answer the question on the exam. Or if all of the students are just doing really good in the semester and that's not predictive of their actual exam result. It looks like it might actually be a little bit predictive, which is nice, but now I can see that and that data are already there. I don't have to go and try and reanalyze it. I've already got that data that I've heard some people going, this is what I would really like to be able to do that analysis. You can if you set this up. I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so what we'll do with this, kind of in line with the previous talk, which was a bit of a roller coaster, what it's going to get done with this extra efficiency, it's probably going to get reallocated. So we're going to get less money for our marking, but at least it's going to be quicker. Also, though, we can use this to motivate changes in how content is taught, so we can see which things students are really struggling with, and now we have that data so that we can actually make that change and tell people, I need some hours to actually change this course. Can I actually have some time to teach these students a bit better? I've got the numbers to back it up. It also allows you to have better conversations with students. I've used these data to then go to the lecture the following week and say, a lot of people really struggled with this part of the assignment. And then you can spend a bit of time in the lecture actually saying, here's how it should have gone. I saw a lot of people made this mistake. You actually have those data rather than trying to ask the tutors to keep that in their mind and kind of tell you how it went. Also, you feel kind of good after the marking, which is actually a really positive thing, that instead of every few weeks you get a really big bout of depression from having to mark a lot, it's now less bad. All right, so that's it. Thanks a lot. Again, thank you for having me at the conference. It's been really welcoming. And I hope I didn't go too far over.
Oh, good. Thanks very much, Nicholas. And it was really pleasing to hear your opening comments about how welcome you felt. And that's one of the main aims of Delta, is to welcome new people and welcome you into the fold of teaching and learning at university, and everyone has a chat about a whole range of things. So we're really grateful that you feel that way, and we're really happy that you've come this week. So thank you.
Thanks.
Come and have a chat to me and I'll save you hours of time on scanning and all of that. So we use Gradescope here heavily, and yeah, your 20 hours or even your 2 hours, I can cut that into about half an hour. So
yeah, I mean, the fact it took me 13 of those 20 hours to scan and mark was already great. If you can take out 10 of those, that'd be fantastic.
Any comments or questions, Nazim? And then Jess?
Very quickly, thank you for the talk. How much does it cost?
I have no idea. I work in the maths department, not the finance department. We had a trial for a little while. So I think we tested it for like 2 years in the end before the university committed to it. So low enough that the university was willing to take on a new software after switching to Canvas and dropping our Blackboard subscription. But I have no idea otherwise. Oh, you know?
$3 a year. That's what they're charging us, but we come from Africa, so that might be a cheap.
There you go. 100 grand a year. I think that's petty cash, isn't it? For the universities. That's but yeah, there you go. One international student from our 20 that we're allowed in at the moment or something. So
thank you. So we use this, and it's really your last comment about like you actually feel good finishing grading. I'm part of the grading team because all the instructors for our coordinated courses have to be part of the grading team. And I was like bemoaning that we have to stay after Thursday night and be there until midnight. And I just felt like, what the heck am I doing as a 40-year-old person staying in the basement with these 20-year-olds but it's actually really fun. Like it has felt good, and we're able to finish the grading before Friday morning. So we post, like they take their exams Thursday night and we post their grades the next morning because of Gradescope. So it's been, I mean, this is for a class of like 300 students total. So it's different.
It's like we're lucky to get our exams by the next morning if they take them on a Thursday morning.
Yeah. But the comment that I wanted to make was, I don't know your name. I'm sorry. Tracy. Yeah, no worries. But so in your presentation earlier, I was just thinking about how Gradescope could be a really cool tool for research. And so this isn't the type of research that I do, but thinking about like if you're doing a genetic decomposition and you're trying to analyze student work and you have your groupings of like, okay, these are the types of responses in this way and these are those type of responses in this way. I mean, you could, yeah. So it just seems really cool. So I just wanted to reemphasize that for anyone who does that kind of research. Like, I think this could be a real helpful tool for getting to do qualitative analysis of student thinking. And it does kind of feel good doing it.
It does, just hitting a couple buttons, like it's two guys.
And the feedback to students is wonderful. They go, oh, you're actually reading the exams and you're giving us feedback on what we're doing. So it's been really good for me as well.
Thanks, Nicholas. I just want to add one thing to that. I moved from Auckland to Australia to go into the education faculty from maths faculty. And one of the things I've struggled with ever since then is going back to my maths colleagues to talk about rubrics and feedback. And one of the most common things for an exam, and we're facing this now because of AI, you know, so there's a move back towards exams and a move away from the kind of the deeper feedback that you get when you don't have an exam. So I think the most commendable part of that, regardless of the software you're using, is the deep thinking you put into the rubrics and the feedback that you're giving the students. So I think for me, we haven't got a hope in hell of spending $100,000 at UTAS. There's no way I'm going to sell it. But what I have taken from your talk is a huge amount of thinking about how we might go back to our other colleagues and say, this is how you can use exams and summative feedback in a really sensible student feedback loop. So thanks, Nicholas.
Yeah.
Barthy was talking earlier about those student feedback forms at the end of semester. Here at UQ, question 8, I received useful feedback is always the lowest value that we get. That's changed since we've used Gradescope because we can give that specific feedback.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's been a really nice change.
Yeah, we haven't got our students' responses yet, but I'm hopeful that they actually do comment on that this semester, hoping that gets bumped up a bit.
I do remember another talk at Delta sometime in the past where somebody suggested that you should, say, for instance, the lecture where you talk to the students about who did what in various questions. And now I am giving you feedback. Start it with that so the students know that what you're telling them is feedback. It was a very good talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, one of the goals of doing this was to try and find some time to go after the assignment. Can I record myself doing the assignment and using those results of where all the mistakes were, show them all of the mistakes while doing it? And one of the hurdles to that was, how do we figure out the mistakes? Well, this was the first step in going, can we quickly or efficiently find the mistakes first so then we can make these feedback videos for everyone? And that's kind of become a next year problem. But we've at least got the first part in that we can identify all of those things to then make that better feedback resource.
Lucky last before cake and cheese and bickies.
Thank you. I wanted to ask this question in the crowd because I'm wanting other people's. I know that at my university, some of my colleagues use something that sounds similar that's called ANS, A-N-S. And so I wondered if there was anybody who was familiar with ANS and whether they knew how it differed from Gradescope. No. I just was looking it up, which is why I didn't hear you asking my name, to see if it was Dutch, but it's actually not Dutch. It is an international thing. Okay, nobody knows ANS, right? Okay.
I am wondering, because Canvas that we use is open source, I know our IT department are building extra tools because one of the things I didn't like about the inbuilt marking thing was that once you filled a rubric, you kind of couldn't get any information out. You couldn't see how many students got a certain thing applied. And then a couple of weeks later, I was at a talk and there was someone there from the IT department. And they go, oh, haven't you seen our tool that we published last week? And I looked and they've got a full breakdown of every rubric item that you apply in Canvas if you set it up correctly. So you still got that issue that you can't change it on the fly, but you can get a breakdown from it. So there's somewhere in the back end where if they allow you into it, you can pull these data if you set up Canvas the right way. So I'm wondering and kind of hoping that maybe they'll build a similar tool to this, and then we won't have to spend $100,000, but we can still get that feedback, and then other people can also use it, which I think is one of the big benefits of things like open source projects, is that you don't have to end up spending more money to get the really nice features. And then, everyone can kind of benefit. So maybe it's coming to other places as well. But for the moment, this is the only one I've seen.
Let's thank Nicholas. Thank you.